What's up? Welcome into this Tuesday edition, Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. We had our first Sunday without football since, like early August.
Well,
right?
You had a great weekend because you had a bachelor party trip.
I was out in Big Bear Lake, California, which
beautiful,
amazing. A bitch to get to though. Yeah. Driving up that mountain, so it snowed the night before I drove up the mountain on last Friday. And driving up a completely snow-covered road that's like turning, and you look to your right, and you probably drop about 1,000 feet if you go off that road. It'll make your butthole twinge a little bit. You know?
I'll also say you're a Midwest guy.
Yeah.
And there's no such thing as mountains in the Midwest.
Correct.
You get some good hills every once in a while. And when you go out west, the change in elevation, the terrain is so much different that a guy like you is probably like a little bit out of his element. It's like when I'm in New York City in those big hotels that are 40 stories tall, and I look out the window and I'm like, is there anything available in the lobby that I can sleep at? So I understand that, but I'm glad you had fun. It's why California is such a crown jewel of our
the variety of landscape
of our great nation.
Yeah,
because you get everything. You can ski, you can surf, you can swim, you can do whatever the hell you want.
My buddy Austin Gale, whose bachelor party it was, he loves to say, he went to San Diego State. He loves to say that on his graduation day that he snowboarded and surfed on his graduation day because they're like 3 hours away from each other.
Doesn't get any better than that.
It's pretty sweet.
First Sunday without football, though. So how did that go for you? Did you find yourself like scratching at the walls of your brain?
So I was waking up at 7 a.m. to go catch my flight back in San Diego. So I had to drive down the mountain. Thankfully, all the snow melted, so it was not nearly as nerve-wracking on the way down. But still, after 2 days of a bachelor party, driving at 7 a.m. was down a mountain was not the best. And then a full day of travel, but came back, watched White Lotus, new episode.
Yep.
Not bad.
Well, a little weird.
A lot weird.
I love that White Lotus show. The first thing that caught me off guard was that intro song, because we fall in love with the intro song every iteration of White Lotus. This one, my wife and I looked at each other simultaneously about 45 seconds into this long-ass song, and I said, this one's going to take some time to grow on me, I think.
Yeah. This season, it felt like they've really leaned into tropes. Like everyone, I feel like I know everyone's character and exactly how it's going to go already.
It's like the opening scene of a whodunit.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their quirks.
Yes.
So you got that hornball at the pool just trying to mac on everybody possible. He's flexing his abs, pecs. He's in there swimming
He could
laps.
not be more stereotypically like finance bro.
Duke.
They really are leaning into.
They did a great. So I'm from Charlottesville, Virginia. Mm-hmm. Charlottesville, Virginia was well represented in that episode in terms of like the people from that area, the Polos, the Crokies, you're going to Duke, you're going to UNC, you're going to UVA. These are the only options you have. I really got that sense. Like it was like a stench off those people. Now I only watched the first episode like you did, but
there's only one episode out.
It was good. It was good enough to keep me back for episode 2, but you got a lot of stuff you got to measure up to in terms of that White Lotus name.
I agree. All right, on today's show, we're going to be ranking top 5 Super Bowl champions right off the rip and the first off the ball. We're going to be going through the potential franchise tag candidates, and we're going to be going through the 10 players most likely to be traded this offseason. So a little offseason primer for you guys. But let's start with the top 5 Super Bowl champions since the year 2000. This was an article on CBSSports.com that caught my eye from Brian DeArdo that I thought was very interesting, because when you go back and think of like some of the best teams over that span, some of them didn't win the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Teams like the 15-1 2011 Green Bay Packers, like the 16-0 2007 New England Patriots, like some of those like real
2018 Chicago Bears,
insane, the 13 Broncos that broke the scoring record. Like, they didn't win at all. Some of these teams that we think of as
Adam Gase,
believe so.
Yeah.
So some of the best ones like didn't actually get the job done. However, we're going to rank the ones that did. So who you got? Who's your top 5 in terms of the teams that won on this list? I'll say this list first. They ranked the 2024 Eagles, maybe a little recency bias there. They went Eagles 1, 2019 Chiefs 2, 2016 Patriots 3, 2013 Seahawks 4, and then the 2020 Bucks 5. To me, that list reeks of recency bias. So we'll do ours and see if we have any disagreements.
Number 5, I'm going to get away from recency bias. I'm going to go give a little bit of love to the blueprint, the archetype that we just saw in this Super Bowl. It's offensive line dominance. And when you've got a quarterback who can be efficient and you got a head coach with a big old steel set of balls and you got a bunch of all pros up front, you're usually going to do well. The 2009 New Orleans Saints.
Yes.
Number 5 for me.
Great team.
When I got into the league,
I think they led the league.
This was the teach tape I was given by my offensive line coach. And he was like, if you want to learn any position on the field, just put on the tape from this season and you can watch these guys just out there chefing it up. Masterclass. You have anything on the 09 Saints before I go on?
They had 39 takeaways that year, second most in the NFL, while also being the highest scoring offense in the league. So score points, turnover the other team, that's a great path to success. I think that's that kind of combination I would put as a top 5 team as well. They're in my top 5.
And you think about all that was going on in the world, particularly close to New Orleans. It was a magical season for the 2009 Saints. Number 4, the 2019 Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay, those are my 4 and 5. I just had them flipped.
Really?
Yeah.
Look at us. So you drink all weekend, you end up coming back thinking like an idiot like me. So we're going to have the same list. That was Patrick, Travis, Tyreek in its purest form. That was the explosive offense that the Kansas City Chiefs yearn for still today.
Yes.
So much fun watching that team, obviously. And Spag's defense, as solid as ever, but it was that offense that carried this group. And it was just dominance. It was dominance.
I think that was, if we go back through, that was the best offense to win a Super Bowl over that span since the year 2000.
Had the Patriots finished their perfect season, that would have been would have been the other one.
Patriots, the Broncos, the Packers were like the other top 3 offenses. 2011, I think it was 2013 Broncos, or maybe 2014, one of those two. And 2013. None of those other ones won the Super Bowl when they really had their dominant.
Broncos it was. Got beat by my number 3 team.
Okay.
2013 Seattle Seahawks, 12th man.
Peak.
Russell Wilson, that defense, the Legion of Boom. Okay, they had a name for these guys. They were just dominant from inside to outside on that defensive front, second level, third level.
That was the peak Legion of Boom. They were just capable of shutting down anyone, as we saw in the Super Bowl, 43-8 against the number 1 offense of all time in terms of scoring, the 2013 Denver Broncos. So yeah,
it may be my second year or my rookie year. We had a preseason game against the Seahawks, and I went up there, and I remember it was Brandon Mebane.
Oh, he was so good. He gets lost in that, but he was awesome.
He would get a sack and he would do the belly roll. Remember this big fat guy, sexy belly roll? Oh, I was so pissed. I was like, "You put that belly away. Put it away."
No one wants to see it.
Nobody wants to see that shit. Okay, number 2. I was 12/13 during this run, the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yep.
They beat the Raiders.
See, I didn't remember them well enough.
They floored the Raiders. I was at this game.
Shithoused the Raiders.
I was at that
was
game.
What when you blow out a team in a Super Bowl, it speaks volumes to like the fact that you can be on a different level than the other like supposed best team in the NFL. So yeah, that team, that defense was the year Derek Brooks set the record, right, for most pick sixes or something, most defensive touchdowns.
That was like Rondé Barber and them.
Yeah, that defense was overpowered. But they had Brad Johnson at QB
on the team.
Yeah, Warren Sapp was on that team. Rondé Barber, Dexter Jackson wins the. Please do. Let's hear it.
So I really liked Warren Sapp's game. Obviously, he was a killer on the football field. I'm not really a huge fan of Warren Sapp. I met him. He wasn't very nice to me. I tried to be really nice to him. Keyword tried. He just wasn't very nice to me.
So we'll tell a story.
That being said, we're going to move on.
No, we can tell a little story about Warren Sapp coming on the show last week or Super Bowl week, 2 weeks ago. He comes on and apparently he gets up there. I didn't see this before, but apparently like he was downstairs waiting and not to say that no one recognized who he was, but like the right people weren't around to get him mic'd up and put him to where he was supposed to be on the set because he joined. And so he comes up and I go to shake his hand and he just like has a fist bump out.
Refused to shake hands.
And it's like, why does everyone want to shake hands?
Why are you guys so weird? Why do you guys want to shake hands? And I was like, well, we've never met. I kind of like jokingly was like, we've never met you. We just wanted to show some respect and shake your hand. You're Warren Sapp. You're 99.
And apparently when he was down there, he could not have been less nice to every single person that came around and asked him.
And that's okay. I mean, that's why he was such a great football player because,
But he refused to shake hands and thought it was weird that anyone wanted to shake his hand. And then we had him on the show. And
then he said that Micah Parsons is not a good pass rusher.
Yeah, dude. So
that 0-2 Bucks, number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1, and you talked about recency bias, which is why I started the list off with the 2009 team, so you wouldn't be in my ear about that. It's the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles.
Hard to go against this, as much as during the regular season they may not have been the best team in the NFL. Like down the stretch, they kind of were. It's just they had some early hiccups. Once the defense found its footing, because they had so many young guys on the defense side of the football, I don't even think if the Detroit Lions were at full strength that the Detroit Lions beat that Eagles team. They just, when you go back through the annals of history and basically the sort of what wins championships, defense, stop the run the football, the historical blueprint to win. There's not many teams in NFL history that did it better than this Eagles team.
Yep.
Number one rushing offense.
Things great.
The best rushing offense in the NFL, best run defense in the NFL.
Cover 4.
Far and away.
Rush the passer with 4.
Yeah. Like so far and away the best down the stretch.
Score off of turnovers, run the football at will, be able to throw the football when you get advantageous looks on the outside, have a quarterback who can convert passes into runs, converting on 4th and shorts. Nobody did it better than the 2024 Eagles.
Yep. All right. My list. So I said 5 2019 Chiefs, 4 2009 Saints, 3 I went 2000 Ravens, because this was the best defense of that. We said some of the best offenses didn't win. The best defense of the past, 25 years did win. Compare the 0-2 Bucks, which obviously 0-2 Bucks is an insane defense too. They actually ranked higher in points per game that season across the NFL. So obviously both were not known for their offenses, but I think the Ravens defense that year was better than the Bucks.
Era so when if you had a suffocating defense, it was good enough.
Yes. If
you could run the football and just absolutely kick people's asses on defense.
And they had Jamal Lewis that year on that team.
Jamal Lewis. How big was that guy?
He was perfect for that defense.
How big was that guy?
God, he was like 235.
And he ran for 200 a couple times, didn't he?
He used to have the record. He had the record before AP broke the record. He had like 295 in a game.
He was just built like a feral hog out there, just running around, goring people.
And then my top 2, 2024 Eagles, I have 2, 2013 Seahawks, I have 1. Again, because like what they did to a Broncos team in the Super Bowl, which was a better team than this year's Chiefs team. They had
protection issue.
Doug Baldwin, Golden Tate on the outside, Marshawn Lynch at running back when he was like peak Marshawn Lynch. That team, that was just a different team. That was a different team. So
they couldn't hold up in protection.
They did have a bad offensive line.
The Broncos.
Well, the Seahawks had a bad offensive line that year. I mean, they had a bad offensive line for like pretty much the whole Russell Wilson era. But basically that defensive line was so dominant that year. Michael Bennett, guy could rush the freaking passer. All right.
Michael Bennett.
Those are your top 5 Super Bowl champion lists.
You say Michael Bennett, I get chills down my spine. That guy used to line up in North Korea when I was out there at tackle. He'd line up damn near in international waters, and he'd rush you from 10 yards away. And you didn't know if he was coming down the middle. He wanted to make an inside rush, outside rush. And you paired him over there with Cliff Averill, who was a really unheralded superstar at the rusher position.
Averill had the speed. Bennett had the quicks.
He was stout. And he was in great enough shape to be able to talk shit the whole game. I remember we had Jimmy Clausen playing quarterback up there. I think it was 2014.
That was
maybe the year after Legion of Boom. And I was out there playing, no, it was 2015 because I was playing tackle. Mm-hmm. So they still had some of those guys on defense. And we had Jimmy at quarterback, and I love Jimmy Clausen. But at the end of the day, it wasn't like having Jay Cutler or Josh McCown back there. And Cliff Averill knew it. He knew that Jimmy was going to hold on to the ball. Every single play that I got Cliff Averill blocked, he was like, I'm going to get that sack on the next play. Jimmy's going to give me that sack. And I'll never forget just the smile on this guy's face. It reminded me of playing against a guy like Brandon Graham. Never stops smiling, but never stops rushing, and is always trying to kill your quarterback. Cliff Averill, Michael Bennett, nightmares.
Looking it up, Averill did get his sack in that game.
He did.
He did get a sack.
I don't know if it was on me.
We'll go watch after this. All right.
Take a look.
We're going to take a quick break after that. Going to get to the franchise tag candidates for every team in the league.
We dig it. Do you? The Pro Volleyball Federation on CBS and streaming live on Paramount Plus.
All right, franchise tag. You can see the article on CBSSports.com breaking down the potential franchise tag candidates for all 32 teams. But
You know what the dollar amount is for an offensive lineman getting franchise tagged?
I do.
Fuck me.
It's $25.2 million.
Are you kidding me?
Which is wild. So some things off the top. I'll read through the positions.
That's a USAID package right there.
That's a full country getting support from the USA.
Unbelievable.
That's a West African nations.
And they're talking about giving one to the guy from
package.
the Steelers. More?
Oh, Dan Moore?
Yeah.
No.
$25 million? I
he's not
saw a
getting
list.
franchise
He's
tag.
on a list.
Okay, that list, burn it. Here's the numbers.
Yeah.
$41.3 million for a quarterback. That obviously could be Sam Darnold. I don't think so at this point, but we'll see. The weird one is linebackers, $27 million. Because positional designation includes guys like Von Miller, guys of that. The NFL still has it screwed up. So Zach Bond, who realistically could be a great franchise tag candidate.
He's got to be paid like an edge.
But he has to be paid like an edge. So there's zero chance Zach Bond gets franchise tag.
They need
That's
to
just
fix that.
outlandish. They do. It's been a thing for a while. Jimmy Graham tried to test it back in the day when he tried to get designated as a wide receiver. We actually helped him out in that negotiation when I was back at PFF with the snaps. But it's stupid. It's easy to figure out.
Graham.
Just make it happen. Wide receivers, $25.7 million. O-line, $25.2 million. That's if you're a tackle. That's if you're a guard. That's if you're a center. It don't matter. Defensive ends, $24.7 million. Defensive tackle, $23.5 million. Cornerback, $20.4. Safety, $19.6. Tight end, $14.2. Running back, $13.6. That's why running backs, tight ends are your most likely franchise tag candidates because it doesn't kill you. And then kickers, punters, both $6.5 million. So let's roll through. AFC East, Bills, no one. Dolphins, Javon Holland is a potential. There's not a lot that are potential guys, but Javon Holland, for my money, a top 5 safety in the NFL, $19.6 million. The Miami Dolphins are in a weird cap spot where I don't think they'd want $19.6 million on the books. So they're not going to just tag him and do a T. Higgins and just let him ride out. But tag him as a negotiating tool if you can't get a deal done. So he's a candidate.
Try to get the deal done.
Yes.
Because he's young. He's a stud.
So good. He's so young, too, still. I believe he's only 25 years old hitting free agency here, which came out early. He's 24 years old, excuse me, about to turn 25 in March.
I was 24 my rookie year, dude.
So, yeah.
Mormon mission.
Viewers off to be.
A lot of white shirts.
I made you convert out there doing the Mormon mission. You get it, anyone?
I had to learn English.
All right. But yeah, he's with the Dolphins, though. This is going to be a tumultuous offseason, obviously, with the Tyreek Hill stuff, with their cap situation being right up against it. A lot of weird deals on the books there that they have. They're $5.4 million over the cap as it stands right now.
So much money into Tua. And the big question mark with Tua all the time is obviously that health.
Yes.
And
then you have a quarterback who legitimately could torpedo your season on your run-of-the-mill scramble. So
you go to your grandma's house and she's got that chest of drawers with the china in it, the fine china in it, but it's behind like 3 panes of glass and a set of doors. They got to keep Tua back there because he's that valuable. But at the same time, one nick and
your dog bounces off the cabinet and all of a sudden china's going down.
That's not good.
But I do think for the Dolphins, you got to keep Javon Holland. Secondary was great last year. That's the strength of your team.
Can you believe they had Vic Fangio and
it didn't work out though. I mean, it wasn't a good year for that Dolphins defense. They didn't have great talent, but
they didn't buy in like the guys in Philly.
It works. It works very well. The simplistic scheme when you have the most talented defense in the NFL.
Yes.
Newsflash. All right, but that's a candidate there. New York Jets. DJ Reed is in this article as candidate. And he's awesome. Don't get it twisted. He's 28 years old, though. This isn't his first time hitting. Usually it's very rare to get a franchise tag after your second contract, right?
Yes.
It's usually going from your rookie deal into your second contract.
Big one.
Because
delay of game on the finances.
Yes, because, well, that's when you're going to sign your biggest deal. And so that's when it is your most effective saving opportunity. But as I said earlier, $20.4 million for a cornerback. DJ Reed at 28 years old, being a somewhat undersized cornerback, I don't think he's even getting 20 a year on the open market should he hit free agency. Now, he's going to be in demand. He was awesome last year. And you would love to keep him if you're the New York Jets. But odds are he's going to be elsewhere, and odds are he's going to sign a deal probably a little under that. I'd say somewhere in the neighborhood of like 3 years at around 18 mil a year, 17 mil a year.
Great.
But I doubt he gets franchise tagged for the New York Jets. Jamien Sherwood would be a candidate for the franchise tag. I think they'd love to have him back, linebacker. But again, as I said off the top, you will not see a linebacker, off-ball linebacker franchise tagged anytime soon. Just flat out isn't going to happen. No one's going to pay $27 million for an off-ball linebacker right now. So New York Jets, we shall see. Rest of the AFC East, New England Patriots, not really any good candidates there. All right, AFC North, where there's a much more interesting slate here. Ronnie Stanley.
Big. Yeah, the Ronnie Stanley one's big because he's been a part of that culture. He's been a part of that program for so long. He's a homegrown Baltimore Raven in terms of, they brought him into this league.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Lamar Jackson probably have a really unique relationship, and you don't want to change anything for Lamar Jackson. You want it to roll out the same way that he picked up the ball at the end of the season. And that's what Ronnie Stanley at the left tackle position. So I think that you have to do what you got to do. You've already got your quarterback there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You've got the expensive pieces taken care of. Go lock down your left tackle.
Yes. I obviously, you'd love to get him back, right? And I think if they did use the franchise tag on him, it would be as another negotiating tool. This isn't a team that's going to let him play on the franchise tag. That being said, there's not a lot of tackles in free agency. If he were to hit the open market,
he would get paid.
He would get paid. It's him. It's Cam Robinson. It's Alaric Jackson. And that's it, really. I mean, you said Dan Moore. I don't think Dan Moore is going to come.
I said that somebody said.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying, but that's another name out there. It's not a name that I'd pay to be my starting left tackle.
I just saw that number, $25 million on the franchise for offensive lineman, center, guard, or tackle, and then I saw Dan Moore, and I said, I got to get my helmet on, dude.
Right.
I got to duct tape you to my back and put my helmet on. We can play a little cyborg football.
Stanley helped himself out this year, obviously, by being fully healthy because the 3 years prior, he missed a ton of snaps. 4 years prior, he missed a ton of snaps. The guy could not stay healthy. Finally did, hitting into free agency. He's 31 years old. I again think the franchise tag at $25.2 million is rich for him, but I bet he'll get something in the neighborhood of if he hits open market with the desperation around the league and with the way offensive tackles are playing into 36, 37.
Yep.
3 years, 60, I don't think is out of the.
Good for you, Ronnie.
Is out of the question
Harry
with the guy that can.
Another Harry Heastand disciple.
Heastand product. Oh, dude, that 2015 Notre Dame offensive line.
Zach Martin.
Take a step back for a second.
Nelson,
No, it wasn't
Stanley.
Zach Martin, but it was.
Oh, Zach Martin was 13.
Yeah, he had come out right before, but it was Stanley, Nelson, McGlinchey, and Nick Martin, Zach Martin's brother.
Nick Martin of the center?
At center, yeah. That was a talented offensive line. And then the right guard actually ended up going into politics. He quit football altogether and he would have been drafted late rounds, but he just was done, went into politics. So
he'll be working a lot longer than I will.
I don't think they franchise, but they could transition tag Ronnie Stanley because the Ravens, obviously they did that with Lamar Jackson. It's instead of the average of the top 5 at the position, it would cost you the average of the top 10 at the position. So it's a little cheaper, but it allows the player, Ronnie Stanley in this case, to negotiate with every team around the NFL. You remember when Lamar did that and then no one ends up offering him. People are like, oh, should we offer him? Shouldn't we? No one ended up really backing up the truck the Ravens agreeing on a deal. But basically anyone can offer you a deal. If you accept that deal, the team, in this case, the Baltimore Ravens, your original team, gets the right of refusal. They can accept that deal if they want to as well. But what it opens you up to is what's used to be called the poison pill. It's not technically a poison pill because you're basically they took out all the language that used to be really. So I think the original one was Steve Hutchinson, guard. I believe it was either going from the Seahawks to the Vikings or vice versa. I can't remember the exact details, but they put in the contract when they did that originally that he had to live 8 months out of the year in Seattle or wherever it was. They put that the Vikings literally could not match it because he wasn't able to do some certain terms. Yeah. But you can do it from a cap perspective. You can load it really highly 1 year and maybe not another year that it doesn't financially make sense for the Ravens to do it. So it opens you up to the guy leaving. You get picks in return if the guy does leave.
Transition.
But it's the transition tag.
And it's way less used.
Way less used. because obviously like it opens you up to actually losing that player at a higher, in a riskier way. So
But
Ronnie
you get the average of the top 10.
Average top 10.
Top 5.
Yes. Pittsburgh Steelers, no real candidates. Bengals, T. Higgins, seems very likely they're going to tag him again. So I mentioned that off the top, wide receivers, $25.7 million. But if you're tagged back-to-back years, you get 120% of the previous tag. So it'd be $26.2 million for T. Higgins.
Man, oh man. I'm happy for all these guys, man.
Which if he hit free agency, he is getting a lot more than that.
Well, I mean, he is the man.
Yeah.
He is the man to be desired. And if it's not Cincinnati, where do you think would be somewhere that he'd end up? Because I've got a team in my mind where T. Higgins could go.
I love two teams, New England Patriots, Carolina Panthers. Both just desperately need a guy like him. And so
What about Washington Commanders?
Commanders would be fun. Now, he's not bad after the catch, but he's not like the yak guy that they really, I think, would need in that offense or would utilize, but they have the cash to play with. So they'd be in the market for a guy like him.
And a fantastic compliment to what they already have.
And it's like a deep ball vertical guy on the outside. I mean, he is good.
Because you can have guys on both sides of the field taking
Yes.
the top off the defense. Pick
Yeah.
your poison. That safety's going to always be wrong.
Yeah. So and if you look at the wide receiver class, it's slim pickings. There may not be another starter like a number one or a number two in the entire wide receiver class hitting free agency. We thought Deontay Johnson would be. Deontay Johnson's all of a sudden persona non grata across the NFL. I don't think anyone wants that guy on their team. So that's it. It's T.
What a strange turn of events it was for Deontay Johnson.
Oh, dude. I've heard some things that he may not go anywhere. Like no one might sign him. The guy's unbelievably talented. He may not play football next year, and he's 29 years old.
That's insanity.
All right, Browns, no real potential candidates. Let's get the AFC South. In this article, it says the Texans, Stephon Diggs. I'm not going to call out the writer of this article, but they're not going to freaking franchise Stephon Diggs.
No.
After coming off an ACL, it ain't going to happen.
Stephon Diggs is going to be on the Baltimore Ravens.
That he feels like.
He just feels like a
Raven at this point. Colts, no one. Jags, no one. Titans, no one. Let's get to the AFC West, where Trey Smith
Chiefs
and the
are not
Kansas City
gonna do
Chiefs, they don't have the space.
They can't do it.
They can't afford to pay Trey Smith $25 million next year. They can't be on the hook. So the thing is, with this, there's always the potential that the bluff could be called, and you need to fit $25.2 million on your cap this year. Why you sign guys to extensions and try to avoid the franchise tag is because then you could put the salary cap hit to this year down to like $10 million if you want to, by pushing out with bonus, adding salary to later years. But if you do the franchise tag, there's always the potential that he signs it, you don't get a deal done, and that 25.2 has to sit on the cap this year, which is a really big number for an offensive lineman. So not going to happen.
Great player,
but unfortunately, they're just going to have to let him walk and probably get the third round compensatory pick in return. Chargers, no one. Broncos, no one. Raiders, no one. Let's get to the NFC East. Eagles. Zach Bonds mentioned in the article, as I said earlier.
What is Khalil Mack's situation in Los Angeles?
He's hitting free agency. He is also old as balls. What? He's 50.
He had a resurgence this past year.
He did.
He's a guy who
goes 33.
He goes run and pass.
He's 33 years old.
He's not human. So we're using human years. It's like trying to attribute human years to a dog.
This is true. He's like inverse dog years.
Yeah.
The guy's really 26 physically.
Like nurse shark years.
I'm not.
Nurse sharks live to be like 1,000 years old or something like that. The Icelandic.
Are we still like taking care of one of a few $100 million a year?
$20 million a year on keeping sharks alive.
Well,
all you got to do is give Khalil Mack.
Chargers are going to spend $20 million a year. To...
He's going to go out there and get 10 sacks and play the run too. I'm just saying.
At his age, guys just don't get paid. Yeah. Unfortunately, 33 years old. I mean,
you get back to Chicago.
Like I'm saying, they don't get paid. I would kill for whatever contract he's going to get, right? But you don't get the top of the market deals, unfortunately.
Okay, I'm just
so I bet he ends up somewhere in the neighborhood of, if I had to guess, like a 15.
I bet Jim Harbaugh loves him.
2 years 30, 2 years 40, maybe something in that range for Khalil Mack, but not near the $24.7 million for the franchise tag at that position. So NFC East, Eagles, Zach Bond, again.
Have to.
They need to resign him. I think you'd want to resign there.
but it's
not for $27 million. It ain't
for a guy like Zach Bond, who experienced a resurgence under Vic Fangio in that new position that he's playing, off-ball linebacker, having an opportunity to be really the centerpiece of that defense, the core of that defense. You would think a guy like that would have a long-term vision, but at the same time, as a player, you want to get yours, strike when the iron's hot, so to speak. So for Zach Bond, I hope he gets everything he is due, because he didn't have that success in New Orleans, obviously a new player in Philadelphia.
I honestly think the more likely candidate, so they put Zach Bond. I think Milton Williams is a more likely candidate. He's 26 years old. This is the first time he's hitting free agency. He had 2 sacks in the Super Bowl. We saw basically how good he was as a pass rusher down the stretch.
Said he wants a raise.
It's $23.5 million. It's a lot cheaper than off-ball linebacker. It's a lot cheaper than wide receiver. It's a lot cheaper than offensive
It's a lot more than he's making.
And it's a lot more than he's making. But he's a guy that even at that number, that's too low. He will get more than that, I think, if he hits free agency. So that's your most likely candidate, in my opinion. Is it going to happen? We'll see. Commanders, no one really. Cowboys, Osa Odigizua is a potential candidate, defensive tackle. Kind of gets lost in that Dallas defense in the conversation, because obviously Micah Parsons commands so many headlines, but dude's been pretty darn good as a pass rusher. This past year, 60 pressures for the Dallas defense. Never came off the field, 859 snaps. Productive player, still young, 26 years old. And for the Dallas Cowboys, the thing is, I don't think they have the space to keep him, though. This is one where, yeah, it sounds great to keep him. Sounds great to put a franchise tag on him if he's not agreeing to a deal. But I don't know if you can fit that on your cap this year, unfortunately.
Osa Odigizua. Because as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, Cowboys are $4.5 million over the cap. They obviously need to get a deal done with Micah Parsons as well, even though he's not hitting free agency. They cannot let that guy walk out the door. So need to make some cap magic. Parking a cool $23.5 million on your cap this year just does not seem feasible with where they're at as a franchise. So I think he's going to hit free agency. Next one, Giants, nothing. NFC North, Lions, no one. Vikings, Sam Darnold. This one's interesting. Yep.
Because $41.3 million is objectively less than top of the market. I think it's objectively more than I'd be willing to pay Sam Darnold.
What is the top quarterback going to make in this market?
I mean, like if you were just a free agent hitting,
because we can
say if Trevor Lawrence hit free agency this year and he never signed an extension, or Jordan Love, they would on the open market get over $60 million a year.
So
it's 2/3 the top.
Going into the dismantling of the Vikings at the end of the year, that Sam Darnold was not going to be a top dollar quarterback re-signing.
Yeah.
After the dismantling, the number dropped even further down. It plummeted down. Do you think that plummet ends up at around 40, where you're talking about with that?
I think it's still less. I think
you think 45 is what he would command.
I think he's clearly not going to be on the Vikings next year also. I think they quite clearly want to go J.J. McCarthy after how their season ended. It's hard not to. When you fumble the bag as hard as he did in the 2 biggest games, you just have to say that, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You can't get fooled by Sam Darnold
yet
again.
Old saying down here in Texas, we say, you fool me once, shame on me. Fool me again. Well, you don't fool me again. Okay?
So the Vikings, I don't think, can question Adolfo, the GM. I don't think he's going to get fooled again, even though they have $55.5 million cap space. They have a ton of space to play.
Pick up the dribble where they left off with J.J. McCarthy next year. That would be so impressive.
The only interesting thing about a franchise tag to me is, what would a tag and trade command on the open market? Could you get, remember when Alex Smith got traded, he got like a second in return.
So tag Sam Darnold for the $40 million
yes,
and then trade him to somebody
who will then negotiate to get a new deal with him. That would probably be less than the $40 million, but it would have more guaranteed, because it'd be like 3 years, 100, 70 of that's guaranteed or whatever. Because you're basically saying you're going to be my starting quarterback for the next 3 years, and then we'll go from there. It's a possibility. I don't know. I think you would have to almost, if you're the Vikings, you almost have to have a deal in place before you. But Sam Darnold, with you look at the state of the quarterback position, he will be in demand. Someone will tab him to be their starter next year, right or wrong, just because he played well enough to do so. Now, did he play well
on tape? We
So-
put the other stuff on tape too. And one thing I want to point out to people who are listening, Mike is great at this stuff. This is the part of the season where I've usually thrown my phone in one of those Faraday bags.
Yeah, you were on the coast already.
I was
Surfing.
Yeah, I was boogie board. I was sponging at the wedge in Newport Beach, not paying attention to any of this stuff. And even when I was in the building during the season, we're not concerned. The only time I think about contracts is if we're sitting in the cafeteria and the TV says Khalil Mack inks new $160 million deal. And I look at him and I'm like, hey, dinner's on you tonight, bud. Outside of that, we don't pay attention to contracts. We don't pay attention to franchise tags. None of that stuff, because rule number one in the league is stay out of one another's pockets, unless you're congratulating somebody. So this is all new to me. It's unbelievable the stuff I'm going to learn here this offseason, being with you. You know, transition tags, franchise and trade, this shit. I didn't even know this was an option. And I'm sure there's a number of people upstairs in certain buildings that don't know their options either.
Dude, you would be surprised at how bad some teams are at just playing this game, which is thinking about all the potentials. Like, and especially the one I keep saying is the compensatory pick.
Oh, yeah.
How many teams just like that doesn't factor in? The New York Giants last year.
You're talking about the Chiefs, like Trey Smith getting
getting a compensatory pick. You'll get a third for Trey Smith if you don't sign guys yourself. So how it basically works, compensatory, and we'll do a whole show on all this stuff at some point. But if you have more guys walk out your door that get signed elsewhere than come in, you will get compensatory picks.
You get rewarded in draft picks.
Correct. And guys that got cut, though, from the previous stop don't factor into the compensatory pick formula. It's just guys who hit free agency on your team versus guys who hit free agency on the other team. That's why the Ravens at the end of the year, when we said they signed Deontay Johnson back, but just told him not to come in the playoffs, because they will be the team then that gets the compensatory pick for Deontay Johnson.
But if he showed up and was on the roster, then they wouldn't have gotten it.
No. If he just was, just the Texans cut him because they didn't want him in the locker room.
Yep.
The Texans could have gotten a compensatory pick back from him. So, again, he may not sign Deontay Johnson. But I mentioned that because the Giants, when they let Saquon Barkley walk, they had a few free agents, big free agents leave, Xavier McKinney as well. They went out and signed, who's the quarterback that they signed from Missouri? Drew Lock.
Yep.
They went out and signed Drew Lock, which negated the compensatory pick that they were going to get.
See, that's insanity.
You signed Drew Lock to negate, I think it would have been a 4th round pick for them. That is just, if your team's doing that, and again, you are not doing this correctly. You are not building your team on. And falls on GM Charlie and Joe Shane. That's just horrible business to do that. There's no way, shape, or form that you should be giving up a 4th round pick for 1 year of freaking Drew Lock. Sorry, off my soapbox. But yeah, to the point.
That's real.
Yes, it's real. To my point, some teams aren't thinking about this stuff the way they should be. That's why we're here. That's why we're here discussing it.
Who's the best team at it?
Ravens. Ravens have had by far and away the most compensatory picks since the start. They do things like sign Deontay Johnson, knowing he'd get a compensatory pick. They do things like sign guys who are cut in free agency to basically fill out their roster in free agency, because those guys won't factor into compensatory picks. So if they lose anyone, they're getting picks for them.
The way I understand it is you are rewarded for distributing talent around the league.
Yes, it's meant as, and rightfully so, to be like a way of saying, when free agency, the advent of free agency, people were losing great players, and they're like, well, we're just SOL that a guy just leaves, walks out our door. They did it as a way of saying, like, hey, if you lose too many good players, you're basically to help you rebuild that roster. And I like it. It's a good way for parity in the NFL, but teams that don't use it, a lot of teams don't, you are just losing out on potentially good players, guys that'll fill out your roster. So back to potential franchise tag candidates. NFC South, no one in the entire division. NFC West, Rams, article has Alaric Jackson. I would be surprised. He was fine. I don't think Alaric Jackson is commanding a ton in free agency. He is about mid-level average NFL offensive tackle. Now, a lot of teams will pay a lot for average. So it's potentially is 26 years old, but
they're not all Lane Johnson, Penei Sewell.
Yeah, true.
And the fall off is a lot.
Mm-hmm. So he's definitely a candidate. Again, that one would not surprise me. Seahawks, Cardinals, 49ers, no one.
Will Hernandez is a free agent now.
Mm-hmm. He was hurt last year.
I don't think he ends up in Arizona, but he could go somewhere like Chicago, maybe. I don't know.
Oof.
I'm just thinking about a guy who's a good pass protector. I like Will
I'd like him in
Hernandez's
Chicago.
game.
Guy is
He's
built.
a vet. You need vets.
Guy is just wide.
Yes.
That man is.
I like wide guards, bro. I like them wide. The wider, the better. First time I saw Quentin Nelson.
Oh, my God.
Son, what have you done to your back?
He has that. You know how in like NCAA 14, when you created a player or whatever, they were just wide. Like they just had like this wide square.
Yep.
That's what he looks like.
Just wide ass, wide back, wide neck, wide head.
It's like, damn, that guy could not have been much else.
But Will Hernandez is like
He's
that.
a bouncer. Yeah, Will Hernandez is. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Those are your franchise tag candidates. Then we're going to get to the 10 players we think are most likely to be traded this offseason.
We're under the lights in Jeddah.
I think we're in for a show.
A brand new circuit for 2025. This is proper racing. The first of 6 doubleheader weekends this season.
All right, 10 players we think are most likely to get traded this offseason. And
Good names on this list.
I think there's going to be a good handful of movement. We'll start with Myles Garrett, who obviously requested a trade. He'll be 30 years old this season. He is still at the top of his game, but the history of 30-plus-year-old defensive ends, as we kind of saw with Khalil Mack, is they can't last at the top of their game forever. Now, his top of his game, even if he falls off a little bit, he's still like a top 5.
Myles Garrett at 80% is better than
right. So I'm not too worried if I'm trading for him. But from the Browns' perspective, you got to give him a new deal. His deal expires after 2026, but it's so low right now that he's not going to be happy. He's not going to show up. He's only making like $15 million a year in terms of just new money the next couple of years. So whoever's trading for him, we'll have to give him a new deal. But that also allows you, if you're trading for him, to put the cap hits farther out down the road. So he's going to be a very attractive trade candidate. I still love the idea of him going 1-2 swap to the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans getting him. They could also get then Abdul Carter at 2.
Wow.
They would probably have to give back maybe like a third back to the Browns or
and
something.
that front becomes the scariest front.
Then
like,
the Tennessee Titans, yeah. I love that idea if I'm the Tennessee Titans, and I really don't like this quarterback class.
And you would have 4 different phenotypes with Sweat, with Simmons,
yes,
with Carter and with Garrett. That's 4 different body types.
I'm gonna get nightmare. But I love that idea. If the Titans aren't in love with this quarterback class,
Sweat and Williams in Philly could be out the door.
Most likely, both are out the door.
Myles Garrett, Philadelphia Eagle.
Don't even put that into the ether.
I mean, I'm just saying the guy wants to win. And if you think Myles Garrett is scary as it currently stands on the Cleveland Browns, wait until he wakes up in the morning and the light at the end of the tunnel isn't a train and it's, the end of the tunnel, and he can fight his way out, because you'll get a guy who is tapping into something we haven't seen, and that's playing for a winning team. So
playing with leads.
Chicago Bears.
Does he want to play for? I thought you just said winning team.
Well, have you seen our roster? Have you seen our cap space?
I have, and its potential. And
you know how many rushing opportunities he's going to get with Caleb Williams and the Ben Johnson offense? They're going to be up early, big leads, get an opportunity to go rush the passer every time, as opposed to just playing the run all the time in Cleveland.
But we've talked about the Browns and their cap situation. It just makes sense. And there's actually other very strong potential trade candidates on this Cleveland Browns roster. All 3 of their cornerbacks, Garrett Newsome, Martin Emerson, Denzel Ward, they all hit free agency after next year. So all 3 are potential trade candidates if they really are looking to reset this cap space and basically try to get picks to make this roster cheaper and better. So Myles Garrett, I think it's ultimately at the end of the day going to happen. All right, Tyreek Hill is the next one. Number 2. Another guy who on the eve of the season, or is that the eve? On whatever's the end of the season. On the dawn. Dusk? At the dusk of the season.
That's the end, right?
Yeah, sure.
From dawn till dusk, or from dusk till dawn?
Dusk. At the dusk of the season. His first thought was, get me the hell out of here.
We're so screwed. Yeah, and like in the interview, he was like, I'm out.
Yes. And another team almost identical to the Browns in terms of their cap situation, where it's like, yeah, you'd love to have this guy. Yeah, he's very impactful on your roster, but he is also 30 years old. He is on the downside of his career, obviously. You know, he's not getting any better. The guy we saw last year didn't even go for 1,000 yards, and obviously that was aided by not having quarterback half season, but still, if you can get something back for this guy, get picks in return, get the cap space that would come with trading him. He has 2 years left on his deal, but $28 million cap hit this year, $52 million cap hit next year.
You put him back in red?
You can put that in the ether, actually. That'd be fun. But I don't know if they have the money to do so, but they have the picks to do so.
Yeah, they've got a couple picks.
Yeah.
They'll be able to do that. Man, oh man, I'm trying to think of what kind of offense I'd love to see Tyreek Hill play in.
I mean, I think it'd be sweet if he went to the Steelers. Now, would they?
Yeah.
If they got Aaron Rodgers and him.
He's perfect for Mike Tomlin. He's insane.
Aaron Rodgers, Tyreek Hill, George Pickens.
Just insanity.
That would be incredible to watch. Now, Arthur Smith, I'm not sure would dial it up in the best way, shape, or form, but it could be fun.
You don't have to dial much up with those guys. Just go get open.
Yeah. There's my dream scenario.
I had two as Garrett Wilson.
Okay.
I know that he's had some issues there in New York, and he's voiced his opinions. And we also know that he's a really smooth football player.
Good.
He's a really good football player.
You can't trade a guy who's 25 years old.
He wants out. Or did he just want out in the current administration with the current leadership on offense?
I think he just wanted out in the current. I mean, it's hard to say. So
can you put those words back in the box?
He has two. I mean, he's only 3 years into his career. He has this year the 5th-year deal that if you are the New York Jets, that's how bad franchises stay bad, is by not putting a culture in place that this guy wants to stay, right? That you're trading away basically as good as you could have done with the 10th overall pick back a couple years ago. It just, I think if you're a new regime there, you're not allowing that guy out the building. You're just not, in my opinion. So obviously, if you're a team that needs a wide receiver, you would be beaten down the door.
Yeah.
Especially in this class, you'd give up a first rounder for a guy like that, I think. Someone like maybe not the Pats because they're drafted so highly, but maybe like
Packers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Packers would probably give up a first for a guy like Garrett Wilson with the way their wide receiver core is going. So I don't think it's happening. I'll just say I don't think he's moving, but there would be interest. There would be a lot of interest. All right, my next one, Derek Carr. He's getting traded. There's just the Saints can't. There's just no reason to.
You got to build back. They got to cut some fat.
Cut some fat. It doesn't save you a ton to trade him in terms of cap space, but enough that it's worth not having him on your roster. Obviously, last year, I thought he was actually solid last year. I mean, he's better than, I would rather have him than Darnold if we're doing player versus player now in who's the best quarterback that's potentially available. I mean, I'd probably rather have Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be for everybody. Derek Carr could at least be, you could see it. And the team that I think makes sense, I don't know if there's any interest, the Jets. If you're just looking at how did the Detroit Lions go about their business and do it, it was a very similar player to Carr and Jared Goff. Now I think Goff's a little bit better, but like go bring in a vet, stabilize it, start making good decisions.
That's the hard part.
Yes. Oh yeah. Don't get twisted. That is.
Start making good decisions, just matter of factly.
But I think there will be interest in Derek Carr, and the interest will not be from New Orleans. Now, the problem is $50 million base salary in 2026. It would probably have to rework his deal because you're not going to pay him $50 million in 2026. But 2025, it'd be only $30 million for you. Very doable if you're a team in need of a quarterback. So I think he's very likely to be on the move. Won't cost a ton.
This next one on the list is exciting to me.
Next one's DK Metcalf. One, because just last year, there was we talked about during the season, him and Geno Smith were on different pages a lot, and it resulted in some very bad plays at crucial moments of games. He only has 1 year left on his deal, $32 million cap hit. It would give them some cap relief. He's 28 years old. He'd be in demand. That was kind of the same time that Tyreek got traded. Second contract. He's a few years in. Right before his deal is about to end, we'll trade him, get a bunch in return because you can get a lot for DK Metcalf. I don't know about a first at his age, but you definitely get a second.
Where would you want to see a guy like DK Metcalf end up?
That's a good question. That would be really cool. And I
Who
don't
do you
know
want
if
throwing him the football?
I think the Texans would be sweet because obviously their receiving core now is just Nico
Have
Collins.
a couple avatars out there with Nico Collins.
But that's the thing. Nico Collins and DK Metcalf, you roll up to that receiving core and you have, say, a 5'10 corner.
Shit your pants all day.
Good luck, dude. You got a 5'10", 185-pound corner.
You're right.
You're getting your ass kicked.
I just remember the ball that Nico Collins had across the middle against the Chicago Bears this year where he caught it, broke 2 tackles, and split the safeties for the touchdown. And I was like, there isn't supposed to be guys like that on the field. You put 2 of those guys on the same field, you're having nightmares every single week. And
why I think Metcalf is very likely to get traded is because of what I mentioned earlier. There's no free agents at the wide receiver position. So if everyone wants a wide receiver, and it's like an okay draft class, but not one where like last year where you're in the first round, you're like, I'm in the first round, I have a starting wide receiver. That's not the case this year. If you're in the first round, you probably have to be in the top 12 to know you have a starting wide receiver in this class. So DK Metcalf, you trade for DK Metcalf, you know you have a starting wide receiver. It's going to cost you, but he's a guy that if the Seahawks want to move from him, they can get a lot in return.
He said he's got a year or 2 left on his deal. So the new team will be inheriting a guy who's going to be playing for a contract. In addition to that, he's going to have a new set of sights, sounds, people, places, things. That's always good for a player, I think, especially someone who's been in one spot like Seattle. So DK Metcalf will be an explosive option for somebody. You mentioned Houston. I love that.
All right, next one, Trey Hendrickson. Obviously, he was unhappy with his cap situation last year.
Guy should be paid whatever.
Should be paid. Only 1 year left on his deal, and it's $18.6 million cap hit. So the Bengals, knowing how cheap they are, they really don't have an impetus to trade this guy. He's 31 years old. Like, they are going to do whatever, but he may pull who was the Jets edge rusher? Hassan Reddick. He may pull Hassan Reddick and just be like, dude, I'm not playing on this number. And from his perspective, he really shouldn't. At his age, with how good a season he just had last year, he should want like a 3-year,
big boy,
$75 million
big
deal.
Boy.
Yeah. He should want a big number because, well, shoot, the guy earned it. And
yeah, he should get franchise tag money.
Yes. So I think he'll make a stink this offseason. He tried to last offseason and he proved it. I think he'll make a big stink. And if he makes a big enough stink, there's a good chance that he gets traded.
Now, Trey Hendrickson is a guy that I think can play in most schemes. He can rush. He can play the run. He's a tough guy.
And what's unique about him compared to a lot of top edge rushers, he goes against left tackles.
Yep.
And he beats the good left tackles.
Yep.
There's some guys that beat up on shitty O-linemen and then they go up against a real, a Lane Johnson, a Trent Williams, and they're like, okay, they just get completely shut out because that's what those guys do. But some guys, I remember Chandler Jones was like the king of this. He could beat the best. He had a unusual move set that worked against some of the best guys because you just didn't see guys with 35-inch arms that used him the way he did. And with Trey Hendrickson,
he just has he has 1 or 2 moves that
he has some unique moves that you just can't game plan for.
What do they say? Fear not the man who practices 1,000 kicks, but fear the man who practices one kick
1,000 times.
1,000 times. That's Trey Hendrickson.
That's his rip
coming.
to the
how
edge.
he's going to get home. He's going to sink the rip into you, and he's going to run the hoop. And he's strong as shit. And he's a guy that plays hard. He doesn't want to come off the field. And that's how you end up with 20 sacks in a season.
Yes.
That's how you end up being a DPOY guy. And that's how you end up commanding this type of deal after a prove-it year.
So even at his age, you would get a good haul in return for a guy like Trey Hendrickson, in my opinion. T. Higgins as well for the Cincinnati Bengals, the number 6 here. Just because we touched on it before. Tag and trade. Potentially, I don't think they want to lose him. Jermaine Burton ain't exactly.
Can't lose him.
Jermaine Burton ain't exactly inspiring confidence after his performance at the Hard Rock Casino in downtown Cincinnati.
Yeah.
But hey, T. Higgins, we'll see what their plan is. Joe Burrow is going to go to bat for him.
Big
Very
smart guy.
Next one is Deebo Samuel. This one is
tough.
Interesting because as much as he's fallen, it won't cost whoever trades for him that much. He has a $750,000 per game roster bonus, which is really the big ticket item here. But given his injury history, it may not be massive, but you could end up getting this guy maybe like $15 or so million next year. depending on those per game bonuses.
Also seems like a rate
How many plays?
to me.
Because his base salary is only $1 million. So I think there will be a market for him. It's probably a day 3 pick at 29 years old, given what he put on tape last year. But the 49ers want to move on from him, which it looks like they do, because they have so much money in wide receiver, so much invested now. I think he's very likely to be moved. A few more, and we'll wrap it up. Number 8, Evan Neal.
Yeah.
This one's more because could just use a change of scenery sort of thing. Because apparently he's just not jived well with the staff there, not loved the city of New York and everything that you hear coming around him and his game. Now, he looked a lot better last year. He's still a liability in pass pro, a lot better in the running game, though. Probably a guard, never really going to be the tackle that was promised as a top 10 pick. He's $8 million on the cap next year. So someone may be calling up the Giants being like, hey, we'll give you a 4th.
Everybody's always trying to get better,
Yes.
especially at that offensive line position. And like you said, he's got a little versatility there with his positional skill set. So somebody's going to try to get him.
And especially top 10 picks, guys who are highly rated coming out of college. Teams don't want to give, other teams even rarely give up on those guys. They're like, hey, I had a high grade on him too. I think this team.
You must have been doing something wrong.
I think the Giants freaking stink at developing offensive line talent, which they may be right. They may be right. So, yeah, there will be a market for him. Mark Andrews is my next one. Number 9 here. He's 30 years old. Kind of fell out of favor in that Ravens offense, even if I don't think he took a step back.
Yeah, he did.
In terms of.
At the end.
Well, the drop. But I'm saying in terms of just like getting open, in terms of who he is. He's 30.
The pecking order.
Yes. His contract, if you get him next year, would be $11 million on your cap. Not a lot for a guy of his caliber, tight end. So it could be in demand. Unfortunately, I don't want his last play as a Raven to be the play that he had at the end of that Bills game, the drop. But the Ravens are shrewd. They don't keep guys just for names. You know, they if they think it's guys at the end of his rope, they don't think he's valuable, worth the $16.9 million he'll cost their cap next year, they will move on in a heartbeat.
It's another guy I could see having a resurgence in Chicago.
Next to Cole Kmet.
Dude, pair those two? Come on.
2 tight ends, the new wave. We'll talk about during draft season. I think a lot of teams are going to be coveting that second tight end this year.
The Raiders are going to go for 3 tight ends.
Yeah, honestly, at this point.
Seriously, they're going to get that
have the wide
Penn
receivers.
State that we interviewed.
Oh, dude, if they do, Tyler
What's
Warren.
his name?
Tyler Warren.
Tyler Warren. That big son of a buck. That guy. You know what? A telltale sign of a guy who's probably going to be a Hall of Famer. You bring him on an interview, and they just don't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
They're just up there like.
He had his hands in his pockets. He was like
he was
chilling.
a really nice guy, and I'm going to root for him. But he will not be on a desk on Sunday. He is going to be on a field catching footballs and blocking people up. I
feel like Tyler Warren, if you got him at a bar, like a dive bar with like 4 beers, he would be awesome.
Yes.
He would all of a sudden,
we can't bring the cooler
all of a sudden it would have been an electric factory, but
probably really good at pool.
Oh yeah. He's probably, the guy's just a talented
a darts guy.
He didn't get halfway there with those arms. The guy's a big ass dude.
He was big.
Last player, I mentioned this one right, Denzel Ward, Cleveland Browns, because he's the most expensive of those corners. They need the cap space, and all 3 are about to hit free agency. So we'll see. He's 28 years old, would be in demand. If they move on from Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward, though, the number 1 and number 4 overall picks previously for the Cleveland Browns, that'd be wild. But it's a big offseason in Cleveland. Any other names that you had on yours that you want to discuss?
You were just talking about the Cleveland Browns. Who are they going to get at quarterback?
Derek Carr. No, I don't know.
God, can you imagine poor Derek Carr end up in Cleveland?
Well, and you have to share a locker room with Deshaun. He's probably be like walking with a cross.
Back.
Yeah. Oh God.
I love this league. This
Can't
league
wait.
is awesome.
Yeah, we will do, full free agency preview, I think, after the Combine. Combine's in a couple weeks. We'll do Combine next week.
We got a show Thursday.
Beginning of next week.
And then I'm going skiing.
Oh, where are you going?
I'm taking my wife and I. We're just leaving the kids with a couple ketchup packets and some cooked spaghetti in the house. We're just gonna lock the doors. I'm just kidding.
Dude, they'll be fine.
We have grandparents that are helpful. We're going to Montana. We're gonna go skiing.
Beautiful.
I've never been to Montana in the wintertime. I grew up, since I was born, going to Montana every summer. Never been there in the winter. So obviously, as an athlete, I couldn't ski.
Big sky country.
I skied from like 6 to 10, probably once a year at our local hill, and then stopped because of sports. But now it's time to get back. My wife has never skied.
Ooh.
And I think she's jealous of those families that are like
ski families.
So I'm like, you know what? I'll butter your bread here. We'll go skiing. We'll be a ski family. We'll try it on for size. Gonna do a lot of pizza slicing to slow down.
It does sound really fun. My buddy bought a house in Salt Lake City because he's a big skier.
Salt Lake's great.
And I see him and I'm like, that would be sweet. But
Brigham Young loves Salt Lake.
But I also know myself and know that I'd probably get hurt because I would push it way too hard because that's just what I do.
I'm just going to be trying to chill.
I see I don't have that.
Put a dip in.
If I'm skiing, I'm like, I want it to be real.
Yeah. I mean,
I can't just like casually.
I got to stay away from the trees, obviously. But I'm not going to
big target.
I'm not going to bark up the wrong tree, as it were, in terms of the skill level for these runs. They got color coded for a reason, greens, blues, yellows. I think that's my speed.
Well, good luck. Stay safe, and we'll be back Thursday show, and then next week at the NFL Combine. Are you going to the Combine?
I wanted to go, but I'm not going to be in town.
Not going to be in town. He's going to be in Montana. I will be there going through some draft prospects for you guys. Very excited. Until then, keep pushing.
Peace.